Great. Well, thank you so much. Welcome. We're so happy that you all could come today. Ceres is a sustainability nonprofit that works with businesses and investors to drive change throughout the economy. We have several Fortune 500 businesses in our network, and our investor network includes more than 160 institutional investors with over $25 trillion in assets under management. And a huge issue for our investors has been the prospect of weakening the CAFE standards. And I couldn't agree more with everything that the mayor said, except for the fact that it's critical that we have near-term emissions reductions from the transportation sector. And the only way to do that is to ensure that we have strong CAFE standards. The CAFE standards, as I'm sure most of you know, are the fuel economy and greenhouse gas emission standards for passenger vehicles. And the reason our investors are so concerned about the prospect of weakening these is that they recognize that the standards help the economy, they create jobs, they mitigate the economic and security risk associated with dependence on oil, and they help promote the global competitiveness of the auto industry at a time where the rest of the world is moving toward increasingly more stringent regulation. They also recognize the importance of ensuring that California is comfortable with the federal regulations and that there's a negotiation in place. And that's for many reasons. As many of you know, over 13 states have adopted California standards, and that represents about 35% of the US vehicle market. 18 states have actually said that they are going to sue if the standards are weakened. That's about 50% of the vehicle market. So it's pretty clear where a lot of the states stand on this critical issue. And obviously, litigation delay, regulatory uncertainty is not good for business. And I can't think of anyone who's better suited to speak to this and the importance of ensuring that we have strong standards to drive innovation in the industry than Lori Holmes of MEMA.
Thank you, Carolee. So I'm Lori Holmes with Motor and Equipment Manufacturers Association. Before I get started on our CAFE position, I'd like to talk a little bit about Motor and Equipment Manufacturers Association, or MEMA. So we represent motor vehicle suppliers. Motor vehicle suppliers provide 77% of the value of a new vehicle. This is a lot of components and a lot of technologies. A lot of those technologies include the technologies that improve fuel efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So of course, CAFE program is very important to suppliers. So what else about our economic impact is important? So we're the largest sector of manufacturing jobs in the US, 871,000 workers. My favorite statistic is that we have grown at 20% since 2012, which is 3 times faster than any other major manufacturing sector in the US. So why is that? We believe in large part that growth is because of those standards set in 2012, all those investments made in those long-term investments in those fuel efficiency technologies and those greenhouse gas emissions. One other thing that we like to point out too is that we employ 2.5 times the amount of auto manufacturers. So just real quick, this is a good snapshot too. I think a lot of people think motor vehicle suppliers are just in Michigan, or they're just in Michigan and Ohio. Our largest growing area is in the Southeast. So now supplier jobs are 1/3 of those jobs are in the Southeast. Okay, so what are our priorities for the midterm evaluation on the standards, CAFE standards set for 2022 through 2025? The most important thing for us is that one national program is preserved. So I think Carolee touched on it. I think most people know that in 2012, those standards were set with a negotiation between EPA NHTSA, and California. We feel like that's very important that they're all at the table negotiating, so there's that one national program is preserved. That's very important for the auto industry. The other important thing for suppliers is forward progress and those standards. So we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. So the preservation of one national program is very important. Carol Lee talked a little bit about this, is that disruption will significantly impact all those supplier investments in all of those technologies that they have coming down the pipe. It's bad for consumers too if that program is fragmented. Economies of scale is very important. If there are two different programs, it will increase cost significantly for consumers. And then that prolonged instability, if there are litigation and it's tied up in courts for a long time, that's also bad for manufacturing jobs and those investments that suppliers have made. So this is our favorite slide that we show. It's a very good visual of why suppliers are really on that front line with the associated risk with developing these innovative technologies for fuel efficiency and emission reduction. Each of these stages a supplier has to go through to develop that technology. Each of those stages can be 6 months to 2 years. And the most important thing to understand about this slide is that suppliers do not get paid until it's deployed, that very last stage. So all of this is planned very carefully. So if all of a sudden the deployment timeline is shrunk or delayed, that's significant ramifications to the supplier industry and those investments. So my last slide is Carol Lee also alluded to this, is that the US is really leading the way with CAFE standards and greenhouse gas standards. And if there's a significant shift to those standards, it will really impact the competitiveness of those US companies. Motor vehicle suppliers are global. There's a large presence in the US. But if the EU or China surpasses the US and these standards, a lot of those investments and a lot of those jobs will shift to other markets, because emission technology is very heavy. It's made where it's being deployed the most. So if EU and China are using more of those technologies, all of those investments will shift to other markets. So that's something that we'd like to explain to the administration, that there will be impacts, even if it's shifted somewhat where these other markets are being more innovative. It will have a detrimental effect on manufacturing jobs here for suppliers and the investments. That's all I have.